Okay, hi. So this is a lesson on how to prep a canvas. So before we can start painting, we'll need to make sure that we prep our canvas properly. Now you can paint on all sorts of different surfaces. It doesn't have to be canvas. You can paint into hardboard, paper, all sorts of different things, as long as you prep it properly first so that the oil paint sits on the surface and doesn't absorb in. So some of the canvases, I'm just going to show you how to prep a canvas today. Some of the canvases will say in the label that they're already prepped, and they are to a certain extent, yes, but really you need to give them another coat of something called Gesso, which would make the surface less porous and the paint is not going to seep into the canvas. But the other thing you need to do is also to stretch it. Now the bigger the canvas, the more important this is, because obviously the larger your canvas, the more paint you put on, and it's going to maybe sag, and you don't want that to happen, obviously. So the smaller canvas is not so important, but I'll show you how to do it anyway. So the canvas, this is an ordinary canvas come from an art shop, will come with these little things. Now these are called spacer bars. So you'll probably see them in little packs, little clear plastic packs, and you've wondered what on earth they're for. They do have a use, and that's going to be for stretching your canvas. The other thing you'll notice in the canvas frame, if I show you here, you'll see that it's got these little grooves, these little slots there. Now that's where you put these, your spacer bars. But before you do that, you're going to have to take this staple out because it's crossing over the frame, and we want to stretch out your canvas a little bit more. So we need to just loosen that staple in the corner first before you do that. So what do you need? So you'll need a little screwdriver, flathead screwdriver. That'll be to take out your staple here in the corner. Pliers, a hammer. You'll need an ordinary paintbrush that you use to decorate at home with, so one of those. A bottle of water. Good to have a pair of rubber gloves because gesso can be a little bit messy, so it'd be good to have that. And cover your table with newspaper as well because it can get a bit splashy, so it's good to cover that and be prepared. Now, gesso. It comes in all sorts of, you can actually get it powder form as well, but I would suggest that you would get the liquid form. Now you can get it from an art shop or all sorts of different places, and it comes in white, clear or black. And we will paint on a black surface later on in one of the other lessons. I'll show you how to do that. What I'm going to use today is the white. But I'm not going to use it white, I'm going to tint it. And I'm going to tint it with, this is just an ordinary tin of tube of acrylic paint. And I'm going to tint it with that. So this one is by De Laroni, and it's a raw sienna. I'm just going to add a little bit of this into the white gesso to tint it. Why am I going to tint it? Well, a couple of reasons. When you're painting oil paints and you want to paint highlights, unlike with watercolors where you would perhaps leave your base, your paper white where you wanted the highlight to go, you don't do that with oil paints. The highlights come on top of your paints, not underneath. So that's just kind of, if by giving a coloured ground, it kind of stops you doing that. So that's one reason. Another reason is that whatever colour that you paint your base will have an effect on the finished result. So if I was going to paint a seascape on two canvases and I painted one with say a yellow base and the other one with maybe a blue base, then the blue based one is going to look cooler in the finished result, and the yellow based one, the colours will look warmer. So it does have a bearing on your finished painting. So that's another reason. Third reason is for it's easier for you to wipe away any errors. And again, I'm going to show you when I come to drawing in one of the other lessons. I'll show you how painting on a gessoed surface is so much easier for you to rectify any mistakes. It does help you a lot further on down the road when you're painting. So that's another reason for doing it, but I'll come to that in a different lesson. Right, let's go ahead and paint to prep our canvas. Right, so first of all we need to take, as I said, to just lever out, and I'm just going to do it on one corner. So I'll show you here. What I've done is levered out the staple on one corner, because I'm going to knock that back in afterwards when I've stretched the canvas. So I'm going to do that on each corner using the screwdriver. There we go. Last one. Like that. So I've levered out each of the staples. So I've left one in place. And so one edge is in place, still in the frame, but the other one is loose. You see, like that. Okay. So now I'm going to put in my spacers. Right. You might find that these spacer bars could be too big for the grooves that are left, the holes that are left for them. That's quite common, actually. So a good little tip around that is take some kitchen roll and just tear it into little strips. And I'm going to wrap that around my spacer bars to make them a little bit fatter, and I'm going to knock them in. Now you see that they're also, you've got one is higher than the other. You've got all the way around, you've got two in each corner, but they're staggered. So we're going to knock the spacer bars in on the lower one first and go round in a circle to do it. Don't do two at one corner at once, because you're stretching the frame unevenly. So we're going to go round in a circle doing the lower one first. So where's my spacer? There it is. So I'm going to tuck that in the lower one there. And I'm going to use the hammer then to, I'll move that out of the way so you can perhaps see a bit better. Now, do you notice how I'm holding the hammer and also the frame? So make sure you don't put your hammer that way, because you don't want to go through your canvas. That would be disastrous. So one hand on the canvas and you're tapping in the spacer bar like that. Let's go on to the next one. And the lower one. Again, hand on the canvas and you're knocking in the spacer bar like that. Right. See that the frame has separated. You see? So you've now made this a lot tauter. So So now we're going to just tap that, that staple back in. So just knock that back in like that. There, and you've got your stretch frame. Don't worry about these looking a little bit untidy in the background there. You're not going to see those. They're going to be in the background of your painting anyway. Okay, so next thing is to paint on the gesso. So as I said, we're going to need, I'm going to take the white gesso, and I'm going to, I've got an empty container here that I'm going to mix the gesso together with the acrylic paint in. Now you can, if you use the gesso straight from the tub, it's quite thick, so you can, like you can see that it really is quite thick. But I'm going to just dilute it down a little bit. So I'm going to add some gesso into my empty container here, and I'm going to dilute it with water, just ordinary water, because the consistency I want to look for is going to be more, I'm just put my gloves on before I do that because it's going to be quite messy, is more cream rather than thick yogurt, if you see what I mean. Now I'm going to mix that, and I'll show you that, see what that looks like. So you see what I've got there? It's quite runny now. That's good. Now if I bought a canvas that has maybe got a dent in it, like I'm just going to press my finger in there, and you can see that that's got a bit of a dent now. And maybe when you bought that in a supermarket or an art shop, you perhaps would have put that back because you thought, oh well, that's damaged. You can rectify that by the gesso, making the gesso a little bit runnier. When this now, what's happening is when I paint that on, it's going to obviously soak into the linen canvas, and as it dries, it's going to stretch out. So it's going to pull out that dent. So if you have a couple of little dents in the canvas, don't worry too much about it because this will rectify it. So I'm going to put this on a bit of a platform because this is going to get quite messy, and I need the air circulation underneath it to dry it properly as well. So when you want to dry it, don't sit it on top of the newspaper, because when it dries, it'll dry very hard and it'll glue itself to the newspaper, and you don't want that. So if you lay it onto cementy paint pots, then you can get the air circulation and it's not going to stick to anything. So I'm going to add some of the acrylic paint to the gesso. Add as much as you like, much or as little as you like. I just want to tint it from the white. So I've got a nice sort of pale yellow, you could say. I could add more if I wanted, or as I said, a different colour as well. It's entirely up to you. Now, if I hadn't diluted that and I'd painted it straight from the tub, and if I had dried it too fast, then I don't know, can you see that? You've got cracking on the canvas. You see, that is painted on, that's gesso that's painted on too thickly and has been dried too quickly out in the sun, and it's cracked. You might want that because that might be quite nice to paint on if you wanted that as a special effect. You can also add sand to this, or sawdust or something, to give yourself a textured surface. It's entirely up to you, depending on what you want your end result, to achieve your end result. But this one, I'm just going to paint it on as it is. So I'll paint it one direction. Making sure that I do all the edges as well. Plenty of it on. Again, make sure you get all those edges. Right, and that will take a couple of hours to dry. When it's dry, you paint a second one, but perpendicular to the first. So the first one I painted that way, the second one I'll paint this way. Now the reason for that is to make sure that you get into all of the grooves of the canvas and you get a nice even surface. You can paint many coats on. I mean, I know of artists that paint maybe a dozen or 20 coats on. The more coats you put on, the smoother your surface will become, because if you think about it, that you're leveling off the grooves in the texture of the canvas itself. So the more coats of the gesso you put on, the smoother your surface will become. Why is that good? Well, if you wanted then to, say you were painting something and you wanted photorealism of super smooth skin tones, the smoother your surface, the easier that is going to be to achieve, to get these really smooth blends in of skin tones and things like that. So there are reasons why you might want to have your canvas really smooth. In between each coat, you can then, when it's dried, you can sand it down a little bit with a fine sandpaper, and that will make it even smoother still. So, but basically for basic painting, then I think 2 coats is probably enough. So what that will dry takes an hour, and then we'll paint it the other direction. The next thing you need to do is be careful of is wash your brush, because in water and liquid hand soap, because if you don't do that, that brush is going to dry rock hard, and you have to get yourself a new brush. If you look after your brushes, then they'll last a long time, and that's in another video of brush care and the types of brushes that you're going to need for painting. But at the moment we've done here, and so I'm going to go and wash my brush, and I'll see you in the next video.